They say love makes you reckless, that when someone whispers promises in the dark, you believe them even when daylight proves them lies. That a man's touch can make you forget he has two faces, one for you and one for the world, and I forgot. I forgot so completely that when he stood in meeting and pointed at me and called me witch, I felt my heart stop, not from the accusation but from the betrayal. From the understanding that the mouth that had kissed mine the night before was the same mouth now speaking words that would kill me. And he looked at me with eyes that held no recognition, no regret, no acknowledgement that we had ever been anything to each other. And I understood in that moment that I had been a fool, had believed in something that existed only in darkness, only in secret, only in spaces where no one else could see. And now in the light of day, I was nothing to him, less than nothing, was simply convenient target. And he spoke my name with the same voice that had spoken love. And I learned that some men can destroy you and sleep peacefully after, can kiss you and condemn you and feel no contradiction, can be tender and brutal in the same breath and never question which is their true nature. My name is Deliverance Corey, and I was 21 when I fell in love with Samuel Hale. 21 when I learned that loving the wrong person can be fatal, not metaphorically but literally. Not in the slow death of heartbreak, but in the swift brutality of rope and scaffold. And Samuel was the minister's son, was educated and handsome and destined for prominence, was everything I was not. I was a seamstress's daughter, was unremarkable and unconnected, was someone who should never have caught his attention. And perhaps that was the appeal. Perhaps I was safe precisely because I was beneath him, was someone he could love in secret without risk, was someone who would never demand he acknowledge me publicly, because I knew the gap between our stations was too wide to cross, and I accepted the terms he set without negotiation, accepted that our love would exist only in stolen moments, only in the hours between midnight and dawn when he would come to my window, and I would let him in. And we would hold each other and speak of futures that we both knew would never arrive. And I told myself it was enough. Told myself that loving him in secret was better than not loving him at all. And I was wrong about everything. It started innocently enough. Started with him noticing me in meeting. Started with small smiles that felt like secrets. Started with him finding reasons to walk past my mother's shop where I worked. And then one day he simply appeared at my window after dark. Appeared and said he could not stop thinking about me. Said he knew it was wrong, but he had to see me, had to speak to me, had to know if I felt what he felt, and I said yes. Said I felt it too. Said I had been trying not to feel it, but feeling was not something you could prevent. And he climbed through my window and he kissed me, and it felt like every story I had ever heard about love. Felt like something worth risking everything for. And I did risk everything, though I did not know it then. Risked it gladly, recklessly, with the certainty of someone too young to understand that some risks cannot be survived. We met like that for 8 months. 8 months of stolen nights and whispered promises. 8 months of him telling me he loved me, that he would find a way for us to be together, that his father would eventually accept me, that we simply needed to wait for the right moment. And I believed him because I needed to believe him. Because the alternative was acknowledging that I was being used, was convenient, was someone he could have without consequence. And I convinced myself that his secrecy was protection, was him shielding me from his father's disapproval, was him waiting for the perfect moment to declare himself. And I built an entire future in my mind, imagined a life where he claimed me publicly, where we married and I became someone, became the minister's daughter-in-law, became respectable. And every night when he left before dawn, I told myself it was temporary. Told myself that soon he would walk through my door in daylight, would announce his intentions to my mother, would make real what we had built in darkness. I learned I was with child in the spring, learned it with terror and joy mixed together, because this was not how I had imagined it. Not the order things were supposed to happen. But it also meant he would have to acknowledge me now. Would have to marry me now, because a child could not be hidden, could not exist in the space between midnight and dawn. And I told him the next time he came to my window, told him with tears in my eyes and hope in my voice. And I watched his face change, watched warmth become calculation, watched love become something else, and he asked if I was certain, and I said yes. And he asked if anyone else knew, and I said no, and he said good. Said we needed to keep it that way, said we needed time to think, to plan, and he left, and he did not come back the next night or the night after. And I waited with growing dread, waited until a week had passed, and I understood that he was not coming back, that telling him about the child had not brought us closer but had driven him away. And I felt the foundation of everything I believed crack and crumble, and I did not know what to do, did not know how to reach him without exposing us both, did not know how to protect myself or the child growing inside me. The accusations began 2 weeks after I told Samuel about the child. Began not with me but with other women. Women who were old or outspoken or simply unlucky. And Salem descended into the madness that had been building for months. And I watched it unfold with the detachment of someone whose personal crisis was too consuming to leave room for fear of anything else. And then one Sunday Samuel stood in meeting, stood with his father beside him, and he said he had a confession to make, said he had been tempted by a woman of loose morals, said he had resisted but she had pursued him, had tried to seduce him, had used unnatural means to cloud his judgment. And my blood ran cold because I knew before he said my name, I knew he was going to destroy me. And he pointed at me, and he said Deliverance Corey had bewitched him, had appeared to him in spectral form, had tried to force him into sin. And when he had rejected her, she had threatened him, had said she would destroy his reputation if he did not submit to her demands. And it was all lies. Every word was a lie, but the way he said it, the shame in his voice, the tears in his eyes, the way his father put a comforting hand on his shoulder, it was all so convincing. And people believed him immediately and completely. And they looked at me with disgust and horror, and I tried to speak, tried to say it was not true. But my voice was drowned out by the shouting, by the accusations, by the fury of people who had found a target for their fear. They took me that afternoon, took me while Samuel watched with an expression of relief. Relief that he had shifted the burden from himself to me, relief that he had solved his problem, had eliminated the evidence of his sin by making me the sinner, and I was thrown into prison with other accused women. And I was numb, was beyond feeling, was trying to comprehend how the man who had held me gently could destroy me so completely. How the same hands that had touched me with tenderness could point at me with condemnation. And I understood that I had never known him at all, had loved a fiction, had built my entire future on a foundation of lies he had told and lies I had told myself. The trial was swift and brutal, was Samuel testifying with perfect sincerity about my attempts to seduce him, about my threats when he rejected me, about the spectral visitations that had tormented him, and he cried, actually cried, and his father stood beside him looking stern and sad. And the magistrate looked at me with disgust and asked what I had to say in my defense. And I could have told the truth, could have said he came to my window, could have said he loved me, could have said I carried his child. But what would be the point? Who would believe me over the minister's son? Who would accept that he had willingly loved someone like me? And speaking the truth would only make me sound more guilty, more desperate, more clearly a liar. And so I said nothing, said only that I was innocent, that I had never practiced witchcraft, that I had never tried to seduce anyone. And my denials sounded weak even to my own ears, sounded like exactly what a guilty person would say. They found me guilty in less than an hour, sentenced me to hang in 3 days, and they took me back to my cell, and I sat in the darkness, and I felt the child move inside me. Felt the small flutter of life that was the only remaining proof that what Samuel and I had shared was real. And I knew they would hang me before the pregnancy became visible, would kill me and the child both, would erase all evidence that Samuel Hale had ever touched anyone inappropriately. And I understood that this had been his plan all along, had been the solution he arrived at during the week he stayed away, had been the answer to his problem. And it was elegant in its cruelty, was perfect in its efficiency, was exactly what a smart man would do when faced with consequences he did not want to face. And I had loved him, had given him everything, had believed every word he said, and he had used that love to make me vulnerable, had used that trust to ensure I would never expose him, because dead women tell no tales, and witches die with their reputations destroyed so thoroughly that anything they said in their defense would be dismissed as demonic lies. My mother came to see me the day before the execution, came with a face carved from grief, and she asked me why, asked me what I had done to deserve this, asked if the accusations were true. And I looked at her and I wanted to tell her everything, wanted to explain about Samuel and the child and the betrayal. But I could not burden her with knowledge that would only make her suffering worse. Could not tell her that her daughter had been so foolish as to love someone who would destroy her. Could not admit that I was dying not because I was a witch, but because I had been convenient. And so I told her I was innocent, told her I loved her, told her to take care of herself and try to forget me. And she left weeping and I was alone again. Alone with the knowledge that I would die tomorrow and Samuel would live and thrive, and eventually marry someone appropriate and have children who were legitimate. And he would tell them stories about the witch trials, about the women who were rightfully punished, about the dangers of temptation and sin. And he would sleep peacefully because men like him always do. Because guilt requires conscience and conscience requires seeing others as human. And I had never been human to him, had only been useful. The night before my execution I could not sleep, could not even cry, could only sit in the darkness and think about how I had arrived here, about every choice I had made. Every moment I had convinced myself that secret love was real love. Every time I had ignored the voice that said, if he loved you, he would claim you. And I understood that I had participated in my own destruction, had chosen to believe lies because believing was easier than facing truth, had accepted scraps because I thought scraps were all I deserved. And perhaps the greatest betrayal was not what Samuel had done to me, but what I had done to myself. How I had made myself small and secret and convenient. How I had agreed to exist only in darkness. How I had accepted that love could be compartmentalized. And I had been wrong about everything, had been foolish and young and desperate to be loved. And I was paying for that foolishness with my life. They came for me at dawn, came to take me to the scaffold, and I walked through Salem with my head up. Walked past people who spat at me and cursed me. Walked past Samuel who stood with his father looking solemn and righteous. And our eyes met for just a moment, and I saw nothing there, no guilt or regret or acknowledgement. Saw only a stranger's eyes, cold and empty. And I understood that he had already forgotten me, had already rewritten the story in his mind so that he was the victim and I was the villain. Had already convinced himself that what he had done was necessary and right. And he would live with that conviction easily, would never question it. Would never wake in the night remembering my face or feeling the weight of what he had done. And this knowledge was somehow worse than the hanging itself. Was understanding that my death would mean nothing to him, would be a relief. Would be the final chapter in a story he wanted closed. I stood on the scaffold with the noose around my neck and the minister spoke about sin and redemption and the price of wickedness. And I looked out at the crowd and I saw Samuel standing beside his father. And I made a choice. Made it in the moment before they pulled the lever. Made it because I had nothing left to lose and everything to say. And I spoke loudly enough that everyone could hear. And I said Samuel Hale is the father of my child. Said he came to me in secret for 8 months. Said he promised me marriage and gave me lies. Said he destroyed me to save himself. And I watched his face go white, watched his father turn to look at him. Watched the crowd's attention shift, and the minister tried to silence me. Said these were the lies of a dying witch. Said the devil spoke through me. But I kept speaking, kept saying it was true. Kept naming dates and details that only Samuel would know. Kept exposing everything he had tried to hide. And I saw panic in his eyes, saw fear replace confidence. Saw him understand that even in death I could damage him. And then they pulled the lever and the world went dark, and I died knowing I had spoken the truth at last. Had refused to protect him even at the very end. Had left him with a scandal he would spend years trying to bury. And perhaps that was victory. Perhaps that was all the justice I would ever get. But I did not die, not completely, not in the way I expected. I woke in darkness, choking and confused. Woke to find myself lying on cold ground with my throat burning and my neck twisted. And I did not understand what had happened, did not know where I was or how I was alive. And then I heard voices, heard people speaking in whispers, and hands lifted me, carried me. And I understood that someone had cut me down after death was declared, had taken my body, and I was brought to a house deep in the forest, and an old woman was there. A woman who was known to be a witch, though she had never been accused because she was too useful. And she said I had been dead for several minutes, but she had brought me back, had used the old magic to pull me from whatever lay beyond. And she said I now had a choice. I could return to Salem and try to rebuild a life that would always be marked by the accusation and the hanging, or I could stay dead to them, could disappear, could become something new. And I chose to stay dead. Chose to let Deliverance Corey remain buried while I became someone else. And I learned the old ways from the woman who saved me. Learned that power I had been accused of possessing. Learned to use it not for revenge, though revenge tempted me, but for survival, for building a life in the margins where the past could not reach me. I heard years later that Samuel had married well, had become a prominent minister himself, had children and respect and everything he wanted. And I heard too that my final words had haunted him, that there were always whispers, always questions, always doubt about his character. And he had spent his life trying to prove his righteousness, trying to outrun the accusation I had made from the scaffold. And he had never succeeded completely, had never been free of it, and I took satisfaction in that, took comfort in knowing that while I had survived and rebuilt, he had spent his life sleeping slightly less peacefully than he might have, had carried at least some small burden, and perhaps that was enough. Perhaps that was all the justice available in a world where men like him rarely faced real consequences. And I had my life, had my freedom, had the power I had been falsely accused of, and I used it well. Used it to help other women escape similar fates. Used it to build something good from the ashes of what he had destroyed. And that, I decided, was the truest revenge. Not his discomfort, but my survival. Not his guilt, but my refusal to let him erase me. Not destroying him, but becoming powerful enough that his betrayal could not destroy me. And I am still here, still alive, still practicing what I was condemned for, and he is dust. And his legacy is tainted by the words I spoke before I died. And mine is freedom, and I choose to believe that matters.